I call to order this Henderson County Board of Public Education Board meeting this October 9th, 2023. Would all rise for the presentation of colors. Everybody turn your phones off first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Ready. Face. Forward. March. Forward. March.
You may be seated. That was the North Henderson High School Air Force JROTC under the leadership of Colonel Eric Runquist. First thing first, we're going to do the agenda, approve the agenda, but we have an amendment to the agenda today. We are going to, looking at old business part B, the Parents' Bill of Rights policy updates. We're going to push those back for second reading till December of this year, and we're going to open up in November, next month, a separate public comment as required by law on the Parent Bill of Rights. So we will be removing those today from the agenda. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to that, Counselor?
No, Mr. Chairman, just to remind the board and the public that the General Assembly, as part of the budget, pushed back the effective dates of these policies to give boards of education more time to consider them, administrations more time to implement these particular policies. So the policies have to be in place. Your concerns procedure has to be in place by December 15th, and all of the policies have to be in place by the first school day in January. So your regular meeting in December is a perfect time to do final reading. And as you mentioned, the statute does require input from parents, community members, students, and teachers, so that your central office can advertise the November meeting as the time for folks to come and give those comments.
Perfect. Any other questions from the board? If not, I'll take a, well, I made the motion. If there's a second towards my motion to get rid of those Parent Bill of Rights till December. Second, Mrs. Caskey. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. So first up, we're going to do some staff and student recognition, sharing the good news. Mr. Mark Garrett.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's our pleasure to do a little celebrating today. This is our of the year period, so we have lots of the years to recognize tonight. Knowing the great staff and support staff that we have around the district, we wanted to take a chance to share some of those with you, and we'll get some photographs. And once we have an individual here, we're going to get one big photo up on the stage, so please do not run off. Give us a little time here. And we'll start off with the beginning teacher of the year, and I'll call on Mr. Buchanan to come up and share about our 2023 beginning teacher of the year.
Perfect timing.
Perfect time. Which way am I facing? This way.
You can face anywhere you want.
This is weird. I'll face this way.
Sure. Just bring that mic with you if you wouldn't mind, so the people at home could hear you.
All right.
Take it up here.
Then I'll face this way. It is my honor to recognize Lauren Snyder as Henderson County's beginning teacher of the year. I know there are a lot of great beginning teachers in our district, and I can tell you this, we are in good hands with people like Ms. Schneider kind of taking over the helms. She does a phenomenal job in her third grade classroom. She is great for the culture of Edneyville Elementary. She works with a PLC that if you could kind of take it and just duplicate it throughout the district with as well as they work together, I think we could do amazing things throughout the district. But it is a well-deserved honor. She is amazing. As a beginning teacher, does not look like a beginning teacher whenever you go into her classroom. You think she was doing this for years. But she works hard, is always looking for ways to get better. She's extremely reflective. And so it is an honor for me to be able to recommend her for this and then for her to be selected as that. So Lauren, a tremendous honor, very much deserved. Congratulations.
Next, we're going to bring up Dr. Shelton to share about the EC Teacher of the Year, most Educator of Excellence.
Yes.
Educator of Excellence.
It is my pleasure to be here today on behalf of Upward Elementary School to recognize Jennifer Langdon as our EC Educator of the Year. The reason this is EC Educator of the Year instead of just Teacher of the Year is because our related service providers and other people who serve our EC students are also eligible for this award. And so we are thrilled to have Ms. Langdon representing us. She will be able to attend the EC conference later this month in Greensboro. She is in her 5th year as a resource teacher at Upward, and she is phenomenal. She was actually serving in our district before that as a sign interpreter for some of our students. So she has shown her dedication to our students and her school in every way. She's chair of the Sunshine Committee. She was even recognized last year's Upwards Teacher of the Year. She is so well viewed by her students, staff, and families. So, Ms. Langdon, come on down. Are you sick? I kept going,
Next, we're going to bring up Ms. Farley, and we'll recognize our HCPS CTE Teacher of the Year, who I keep coming to the song, All I Do Is Win, 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 because she was here quite a bit last spring as well. So, Ms. Farley?
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Hello, everybody. It's my honor to recognize Ms. Christine Corin as Henderson County Public Schools Career and Technical Education Teacher of the Year. Ms. Corin teaches Family and Consumer Sciences at the Henderson County Career Academy, and she oversees our culinary program. She's a true leader in our building, serving on the SIT team and as an advisor to our FCCLA club, as CTE department chair, as a mentor to a beginning teacher, and as our school social media manager. Thank you so much for doing that. There's not much that Ms. Corin does not do, and we are so thankful for her service, dedication, and positive presence on our staff. Ms. Corin?
Next, we'll bring up Mr. Scott to share about our outstanding secondary math teacher.
Good afternoon. I'm so glad to be here. Got to work with Maggie for the last 5 years, and from my perspective, she's one of the best math teachers that I've ever been around. I'd put her up against anyone. Really smart, hardworking. She is dynamic if you've ever been in her classroom. This is so well-deserved, one of the best teachers I've been around. So, Outstanding Secondary Math Teacher of the Year, Miss Maggie McDade.
Ms. Joni Allison will now come up to share about our 23-24 Media Coordinator of the Year.
Thank you. The Media Center at Hendersonville Middle School really is the heart of our school, and that is all in due to Ms. Cheek. She handles everything that comes into her Media Center with grace and compassion, including having to pass out 500 Chromebooks 2 months into her career, and she's still here. So I do want to say that she makes our Media Center a safe space for everybody who comes in there, and I am so glad that her peers recognize her for her tireless commitment to our school and our school community.
Next, we'll have Dr. Davis come down and share about our School Nurse of the Year.
I have the pleasure of recognizing Rebecca Barker. At Apple Valley, we really haven't had a consistent nurse for several years, and Rebecca was a part-time nurse for us during COVID. And to say that she transformed my nursing office is an understatement. She goes above and beyond for our students. She looks for areas that she can help them, both in our school and outside our school. So it is an honor to recognize Rebecca Barker.
Hey.
So unfortunately, you'll have to hear from me on the next two. Want to recognize our Teacher of the Year, who was named in the spring, but wanted to have a chance to share this evening about Mr. King as well. He was unable to be here this evening, but Dylan King, science teacher at North Henderson High School, is the District Teacher of the Year serving this year. Like all 23 nominees from each school, he was nominated by his peers and selected by his peers and designated as the School Teacher of the Year initially. Following extensive interviews with a selection committee, Mr. King was selected to represent HCPS. He's the co-advisor for the National Honor Society for over a decade. In that capacity, he and his students volunteer their time to tutor at North and in the feeder schools. They also volunteer at the Manna Food Bank, raise money for cancer research, aid in campus cleanups, and work closely with the spring games of the Special Olympics. They also participate in the Buddy Walk that benefits the Down Syndrome Alliance. He coordinates the school's Leader in Me initiative, which is now recognized for Lighthouse status, one of the rare high schools in the nation to do that. Organizes project graduation, den leader with a local Cub Scout chapter, and coaches a youth soccer program. So somewhere in there, he also has time to be a bang-up science teacher, which is the most valuable piece to us day to day. So we want to certainly give honor to Mr. King, and you've got some photos up there of him, so let's congratulate Mr. King. And then we'll end up with our Principal of the Year. October is National Principals Month, so I want to say thank you to all 23 of our principals and the great job that they do. And one of the great things about Teacher of the Year, the Teacher of the Year process, and the Principal of the Year process is it is peer-driven. This is not some third parties that go in and pick this. This is selected by the folks who work hand in hand with them and collaborate with them each and every day. So our Principal of the Year is Dr. John Medeiros. So Dr. Medeiros, if you'll come up. So Dr. Medeiros, Rugby Middle School principal, I believe he is not used to being surprised and doesn't love that, but it happened on last week. He was able to drive through a cheering crowd of students. There was a fire truck. There were a couple of different police escorts, which I think made him maybe more nervous than when he sees all these kids outside. And I said, well, this will be a great celebration once he calms down from the heart attack he may have. But certainly it was awesome to see the school turn out and turn up in honor of Dr. Medeiros. And I think the excitement with everybody else was kind of moved him to have some great emotions that you don't always know how you're doing day to day, but that was certainly, I think, validation. In the time that I've worked with Dr. Medeiros, he's very studious. He is very planned in his work, and he is people first. And I think that says a lot about that you have been chosen, and it has been a great choice. He will now go on to represent Henderson County Public Schools at the regional level with the Western Region. He's going to win that, and then he'll win state principal of the year as well. So he has some chances to be surprised even more and maybe even shed a few more happy tears. But certainly, it was an honor for me to get to share that, and we all congratulate you, Dr. Medeiros. So congratulations. So in preparing for this evening, it really hit me that once you look up on the stage, when we talk about our of the years and the quality in this district, every single person is from a different school. So all of these of the years is spread around this district, whether we're talking about Rugby and Apple Valley Middle, Hendersonville Middle. The middle schools did well this time around. We've got East, the Career Academy, IHS, we have Upward, and we have Edneyville Elementary. So, and then we have North Henderson High School with our Teacher of the Year. So I hope that you will recognize that. And just when we talk about Henderson County Public Schools and we talk about the quality, it's our goal that no matter where the bus drops you off or where you're zoned, you get this type of quality. So thank you and congratulations once again.
There we go, spotlight.
And members of the board, I want to thank you for allowing us to take this opportunity to share this good news.
I know, it's awesome. It's perfect, right? That's how you draw it up. All right. Next up on our agenda today is our program highlight. Oh, perfect. This is going to be the Hope Coalition vape presentation, and Miss Shannon Alton, I believe you were going to welcome our guest.
Thank you for having us today. So Dr. Michelle Geiser with Hope Coalition is going to present some data for you. Michelle, please.
And as Dr. Geiser comes up, I want to provide a little context. You know, we've had a lot of discussion about vaping and the things that we're dealing with at the school level, really as a community. So you have an agenda item a little later that's a follow-up from some questions that came in your September meeting, but we decided we would invite Dr. Geiser, who has loads of data and loads of experience with all kinds of substances, including vapes. So Dr. Geiser, thank you for coming out tonight and sharing with us.
Thank you very much for having me. I am excited in one way to be sharing some of this information and just making it more of an awareness for the community and to the board, but also we're grateful just to be a part of it. So we're really, I'm going to start briefly just with an introduction of who Hope Coalition is for more of a context, and then we're really going to look mainly at vaping and some of the current trends and things that other people around the nation are doing to address this issue. So as I'm sure you're aware, most of the schools around the nation are looking at alternatives, and we're looking to other options on how to manage kind of this crisis that we're seeing. And so Hope Coalition, in that role, many of you are probably most familiar with us for the Week of Hope. And we come into the schools every year about 2 weeks before spring break, and we have discussions with the youth around substance misuse, particularly during spring break, which if you look just statistically, there's a higher risk for youth to begin using for that first onset during spring break. And so that's something that we've been a part of. But in addition to that, we have been working very closely with the schools, with law enforcement, and really digging into current trends. And so vaping happens to be what has kind of come up in the last few years as being one of the largest risks to our youth. So Hope Coalition has been working to see with other groups and other coalitions around the country, things that have been working and ways that we might be able to address this issue on a community level. So the reason we're doing this is we know that youth are particularly at risk. Their brains are developing for a variety of reasons. They have more exposure because of their peers, access, but they're more at risk for trying substances and subsequently becoming addicted because of kind of where they are developmentally. So out of the adults that we work with, because we do work across the spectrum, 9 out of 10 of those individuals that we serve began using before the age of 18. And so if you take that and you look at the youth who are currently using and they're self-reporting, for us that becomes really a moment of concern to see what we're going to be looking at 10 years from now and the prevalence that we're seeing. So if you look nationally, really the data suggests that the top issues for kids happen to be nicotine, alcohol, and cannabis. So vapes, I want to be really kind of clear in this one issue, is that vaping is a mechanism. So when we talk about vaping, I really kind of think of it as a cup, right? So you can bring in a coffee cup, and sometimes you might have coffee in it, but sometimes you might have tea in it. Sometimes it might just have water. So vapes are really just a mechanism to supply drugs to, in this case, youth. And so vapes can contain, and almost always do contain, nicotine 99% of the time. However, they also can contain a variety of other substances. So even in that 99% context that I'm thinking of, if I grab a vape and it tests positive for THC, it's also going to test positive for nicotine. And so the reason for that is the potency of nicotine is so strong to bring, especially a young person, back to using that substance. It makes sense to include that in whatever substance that's being sold. Right? So about 99% of the time. So if we look at that just for our county, and we're looking at our middle and high school students, if we're looking at that vape percentage, so somewhere between that 30 and 34%, we're looking upwards of 1,800 students who would be vaping in our schools today, at any given day. Okay, and that is standard across the United States. So we are not alone in what we're seeing. Unfortunately, we're up against a large machine of work and money who is targeting kids specifically. If we look at the advertisements, if we look at flavoring, we know that really tobacco is coming for children. And that was very well seen when Juul had to come up against multiple school districts because of what they were doing in targeting youth. So when I'm talking about advertising, just so you're aware of what our kids are seeing out in the community, what our kids are seeing on their cell phones, what they're seeing through social media, YouTube, for instance, we're seeing a tremendous amount of advertising, and to the tune of $1 million an hour is what tobacco companies are pumping into this. So as a nonprofit, we do not have $1 million an hour or a year to put directly into vaping. And so we know that we're up against big players, even in Henderson County. So if you look just really briefly at the map, just kind of orienting yourself with the county as a whole, which we know is very large, encompassing multiple municipalities. But we have over 15 vape-specific shops and over 17 gas stations that are selling vape products. And these are just kind of showing where they land on the map. I will tell you that every one of our schools has a store, either a vape shop or a retail store that sells vapes within walking distance. And so for us, on that end, I won't spend too much time on this. We do have a partnership with the University of Asheville, of North Carolina and Asheville, and we have a group of students who are doing analysis on this so that they can come back to our Board of Health and let us know the proximity of some of these stores and retailers to our schools, to our playgrounds, and to other kind of youth-serving organizations. So now we are at a point where data is always lagging a little bit behind, We saw a bit of a dip in use during COVID. Again, I think that was kind of an access issue. But so for 2022, when we're looking back at what e-cigarette use is, self-reported from youth, so we have to keep that in mind. If you just put a number in your mind of how many youth you believe would self-report within the United States, and hold on to that for 1 second, we're at over 3 million. Okay, and again, that's self-reporting. So self-reporting data is usually low in comparison to actual data of what we're looking at. So really that translates to about 1 in 5. And so again, this is not a Henderson County problem. This is a national problem. This is something that we're just seeing ongoing across the United States. The reason we are seeing so much of this and how pervasive it is because they are targeting kids. So if you look at the image in the middle, these are more recent vapes that have kind of come into town. They are supposed to resemble boba, like boba tea. So kids really enjoy boba tea. And so they made a vape to look very much like it. The colors, the orientation, you can buy sleeves, so skins to cover up your vapes that match your outfit, that have designer labels on them. You can pick your flavor, and the flavors are everything that you can possibly imagine. Youth have, again, self-reported that 85% of them are using candy-flavored or sweet-flavored vapes. So youth aren't going in and purchasing tobacco-flavored vapes. They're looking at, raspberry or strawberry mint, and so they're picking these things that allow them to engage in a substance, but it also isn't making a turn-off to them because the flavor is something that they're very familiar with. It's something that we see in their gummies that we're putting in lunch boxes, right? And so if you were to enter into a vape shop today, you would see an entire wall of usually ELF bars, all color coordinated to look like the rainbow, and there are different flavor profiles, and it's very attractive to young people. So when I started this, began by kind of sharing that vapes are a mechanism, and I think that's important. We have come away from this idea that smoking cigarettes is a gateway drug, right, or marijuana is a gateway drug. But I will say that vapes are a gateway mechanism. And I would say that because more youth are transitioning between substances because it looks the same. So when I was younger, if you had someone was smoking a combustible cigarette, it was in a box that was noticeable as cigarettes. And if someone was smoking marijuana, that looked very different. But now if you're going out with your friends, one vape can have anything in it, and they will look the same, and they will smell the same. And so for a child to be able to differentiate is something that is very difficult if they can differentiate at all, but we're seeing this transition into recreational marijuana use is also climbing as kind of vape use is climbing. Some of the things we have found in vapes locally, we have found vapes with opiates in them, so think fentanyl. We know that from our neighbor in Tennessee, where they had a student resource officer, an administrator, and a nurse who all overdosed when a vape broke in their school. We've had methamphetamine in our vapes, GHB, ketamine, THC. More recently, when I had a conversation with some youth locally, one shared with me that they had been laced with ketamine, and another shared with me that they had been laced with PCP. So this is an ELF bar. Oftentimes when I talk to kids or to parents, you're buying something that's disposable. It looks like a closed circuit. So closed circuit would mean that you can't access it and you can't alter it. It's not true, unfortunately, you can. And so most of the time when law enforcement is involved, they're opening the vape and they're able to see if it has been altered in some way. Again, if you're looking at two vapes side by side, one that has legal nicotine for people who are 18 and over, and one who has illegal marijuana in it, look very, very similar. So it's very difficult to differentiate between these things. These are all examples of vapes that contain either CBD or THC. Okay, but both have psychoactive ingredients, both respond very similarly, whether it's a body high or brain high. And so when we're talking about vape shops, the kind of next step is also being aware that the vape shops are also CBD stores that are selling things to the youth that are above and beyond nicotine. Okay. So that all to say, there are things that we can do. There are communities that are seeing positive impacts that are able to get in front of youth and to make some more awareness and some psychoeducation that is showing impact as far as decreasing use. So there are some resources with the American Lung Association in particular. Also, the American Heart Association has come out with really great resources. I would say Stanford has come out with some as well. The Guiding Principles that was published in 2014, that really is just giving more of an insight into how schools have been regulating this issue with vaping. So most of us have seen an increase of suspensions, right? You're coming up against tobacco-free policies, so we have 100% tobacco-free policies on our school grounds. No tobacco products are allowed, and vapes are included within that. And so within reason, we understand that if a youth were to come into school and they have a vape on their person, that typically the punishment would be that you're going to receive a suspension. And those suspensions vary from 3 to 10 days, is my understanding. But I think what we're seeing in the community level with the young people that we're working with is that very quickly that snowballs, and very quickly we're working with kids who've missed 40 days of school, because at the end of the day, they're becoming addicted to these substances. And addiction is really defined by you're having negative consequences, but you're going to continue that behavior anyway. Right? So for youth, that's typically altercations with their parents, being suspended from school, but the power of that addiction is so strong that they're continuing to use. And so a lot of the things that we're looking at now are looking at ways to meet the child where they're at, not only looking at punitive situations, but also trying to determine the best practice to support youth in quitting. Most youth do want to quit once they realize that they're addicted, once they realize they have to walk it at the movie theater when they're on a date with their boyfriend or girlfriend. They start to get frustrated. They start to really engage in conversations around quitting, but they don't know where to start, right? It's not necessarily a conversation they want to have with their parents or their administration yet. But beginning by opening the door and offering education classes, there are numerous evidence-based education classes that have been supportive. Statistically, right now, they're showing about an 85% success rate for kids who are engaging in those psychoeducation and prevention classes, and supporting them to engage in recovery and to begin to quit smoking. There are other systems that schools have employed that are anonymous reporting systems, and that was really mainly to curtail some of the vaping in bathrooms and in public spaces that were making non-vaping students uncomfortable. And then lastly is to provide a cessation program. So cessation is just a way to help them quit, and not necessarily within school, but referring them to their primary care provider or to an online resource, but definitely having accessibility to those resources to give to parents and to share with youth. A couple of states that have had massive success, I would say Florida has begun to incorporate kind of that 3-hour-long psychoeducation prevention portion, and since 2020 they served over 15,000 students within that program. And so when reflecting back on that 85% success rate, in Florida they had a 69% completion rate, but when we're looking a year from the time of the psychoeducation class and moving forward, the rate of those youth terminating their relationship with cigarettes is 85% higher than youth who did not complete. So it's really a positive turn, and I think some of the states that have implemented these programs are beginning to see some of that. New Jersey is another state that they have engaged the Aspire program, which is another evidence-based program, and I would say that as we move forward, we're going to see more engagement in this. EverFi, which I believe we're already engaged in, has a tobacco program as well that is very strong, has great outcomes, easily accessible for youth. So there are many opportunities for us to engage and begin looking at that. What we're really looking for is that safe, supportive environment that we're all striving every day to provide for our youth, and provide for all of them, whether they're youth who are vaping or youth who aren't vaping, but all of the youth that we're speaking to are being impacted by this. Using substances in high school and middle school is directly correlated to dropout, to loss of academic success for the student body as a whole. So if you look at how it impacts the entire student body. But I think if we can begin to curtail access, which is something that we're working on the community level, and if we can support the school in any way to look and evaluate some of the psychoeducation programs, I think that there are definitely forward strides to be made above and beyond some of the things that haven't worked, like vape detectors in the bathroom. So lots of creative people are coming at this from different angles, but right now the evidence is in education. It's a lot of information.
So Dr. Geiser, again, thank you for sharing. I think it's important that we see kind of the macro issue with the vaping and the mechanism, and also as we start to drill down to the micro at our school level. What advice would you give to communities that are really battling this?
I would say as adults, we struggle to seek first to listen and to understand, right? And so asking the question, typically my first is the why, right? Why are you vaping? Like, what is it providing to you? What are you gaining from this? And then on the flip side, what are you losing? Because it's really remarkable when youth start to really understand, like, how it's impacting the relationship with their parents, right? Like, how many times are you getting grounded? And like, how many times have you lost your driving privileges or your cell phone? And really starting to have some of those honest conversations. And the punitive piece, one of the most profound things that I've heard from a young person regarding their suspension was that adults do not understand me. I have been suspended for 30 days, and it feels like I'm at the bottom of a mountain, and you're asking me to be on top. And they just can't see it because they are falling further behind. They're feeling ashamed, and they end up in this cycle where it's hard to get them out. It's hard to get someone to bounce back from that. And so I think the more that we can engage them back into our community, and whatever that might look like, I think that there have been some very interesting mentoring programs with maybe first responders, other mentors who are positive influences that take up some of that time. But sending someone home, they're all just vaping more, right? They're going into their rooms and they're power vaping, and they're not getting on Power School most of the time and checking their homework.
And then as a community, how can we advocate, I think, at the larger level of the vaping endemic that we're facing?
For me, it always comes back to access. Access is definitely one of the points that is very aggravating to me when I drive down one of our main streets and see that there are marijuana leaves that are hemp, but all these advertising, because vape stores do not have the same laws connected to them that SINAR has for traditional tobacco. So when you see the vape stores and they have rainbow, flyers that are flapping out and they're telling you, like, we have edibles and we have this flavor. I think as a community, we can really rally and say, like, this is not acceptable. We do not want you coming towards our youth. We do not want you engaging it, and just ensuring that we're continuing that message, because right now I think a lot of our vape stores are providing vapes to our youth without identification. It's not very difficult to acquire one. And so for me, as a parent of teenagers, it's very frustrating to know that they can both walk into a store and purchase whatever they want. There's very little that I can do about it. And so I think as a community, definitely access is a part that we can come towards together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Geiser from the board? Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, next up, board chairman observations. I don't have any this month. Board member observations. Any from this side of the room?
Ms. Norman and Mr. Craven and I were very fortunate to visit Sugarloaf Elementary this week. And it was a day of sunshine. I mean, this newcomer she's incredible.
She is.
It was such a positive environment. All the kids were happy. They were all learning. They were all feeling respected, and they were respected. So just kudos to her staff. That was phenomenal.
Mrs. Dale and I got to go on a visit to Flat Rock Middle School, and of course, it was really a pleasure to get to see Mr. Stepp in his role there as the new principal, and the energy that he exudes, and the positiveness and the belief that, and high expectations for his student and staff. And it was just a pleasure to get to hear him talk about the teaching and learning process and show off his teachers. That was what I really enjoyed. Mrs. Dale?
Well, I just think he's a ball of energy.
He is.
To say
And,
the least.
oh, yeah. He's excited about his job, and he's not cutting any slack anywhere, I have to tell you that. I was very impressed with him as a principal. I think I'll be following him closely.
I definitely second what Ms. Caskey says. I was very, very impressed. That's by my visit to Sugarloaf. I also just wanted to say a couple weeks ago, I had the pleasure of attending 2 of the See You at the Pole events at the schools. Attended one, hurried to another, and caught the last little bit. And I just wanted to say how good that did my heart to see so many staff and students and just families and communities coming on that particular day, and just really praying over our schools in particular, and our staff and our community. And I just, it just blew me away. I was so impressed, and I just want to say, know that I'm always praying for the schools and for our administrators and our teachers and our community and our students. And I'm just, I'm so thankful to live here where there are so many that really shower this place with prayer.
Thank you. All right, next up, we're going to have public comments. We've got 5 or 6 today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we are going to start first with Mrs. Katie Gash. Welcome.
Good evening. Today, I'd like to share about a conference I attended this weekend. I researched and funded my participation because I think it's important for teachers to stay up to date on best practice and to always have an eye towards helping those who have traditionally been marginalized within our education system. The name of the conference was The Color of Education, and its theme, The Path Forward, Co-Creating Equitable Spaces. Color of Education is a partnership between the Dudley Flood Center for Educational Equity and Opportunity, Public School Forum for North Carolina, and the Samuel Du Bois Cook Center on Social Equity at Duke University, and the Center for Child and Family Policy. The Color of Education Summit brings together educators, policymakers, researchers, students, parents, community members, and other key stakeholders focused on achieving racial equity and eliminating racial disparities in education. Indeed, 8 years ago, the Public School Forum of North Carolina published the final report from their Committee on Racial Equity. This report highlighted 7 domains of racial inequity in education: school resegregation, the opportunity or the achievement gap, teacher diversity, cultural responsive pedagogy, discipline disparities, overrepresentation of students of color in special education, and lack of access to advanced coursework for students of color. My heart breaks that more teachers do not seek out these types of opportunities to better prepare themselves to teach in our more racially diverse classrooms, where students of color are too often not being taught well and not being afforded opportunities of high rigor to develop their full potential. My heart breaks even more that our district does not lead in a purposeful, pervasive, and consistent manner in this area of teacher training. With that said, I am grateful for the opportunity to have presented a session entitled Becoming a Culturally Relevant Teacher, My Journey, at the HCPS beginning of the year Teacher PD. I presented 2 sessions and had about 40 participants. I would, however, like to see more of these types of equity-focused opportunities being offered in a manner that is bold and brave and, quite frankly, required. Top-down, district-wide, pervasive efforts to reduce the racial inequities that persist should not be optional, should not be dependent on the comfort level of the majority, and simply should not be in the course of time. We require a certain number of CEUs in literacy every year. We require our teachers to attain a certain number of technology CEUs every year. Why not require them in equity standards as well. Why not lead the state in this arena? And then as I close, I just wanted to tell you about one of the breakout sessions I attended. It was called Redressing the Post-Brown Decimation of the Southern Black Educator Workforce to Support School Integration and Educator Diversity in North Carolina. I was surprised to see them reference the Chambers versus Hendersonville City Board of Education 1966 decision. But in concluding, what the presenters said was this: think of the scale of the harm, and now ask if the efforts we're engaged in are equal to the scale of the harm. Thank you for allowing me to share this with you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Joe Elliott. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm actually had planned to address the Parents' Bill of Rights. I think I'll just save you the time. Come back next month.
Thank you, sir.
But I would like to take the opportunity to say Happy Indigenous Peoples' Day to everyone here.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Mary Ellen Custom. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Ellen Custon, and my oldest kiddo is excited to be back at Bruce Drysdale today after a much-needed intercession break. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to use my time to touch on issues raised during last month's discussion and Dr. Geiser's presentation, vape detectors. I sat here and watched the discussion, and three main points stuck with me. The negative effects of vaping are real. Also, the addictions are real. Vape detectors may be unreliable when working properly, and students may tamper with them or otherwise easily evade them. And three, it would cost us $500,000 to install vape detectors in all our middle and high school bathrooms. On the topic of health effects and addiction, Mr. Garrett pointed out last month that one flavor pod is akin to a pack of cigarettes, and while in the pre-vape days, kids may have gotten busted for smoking a cigarette or two, very few kids are chain smoking a pack or more a day. And furthermore, administrators spend a big old chunk of time on the vaping issue, in large part because vaping is hard to detect and, as we heard, easy for kids to get their hands on. The discussion last time around indicated that installing vape detectors would be a poor investment. I agree. But even if the detection system didn't cost $500,000 and always worked perfectly, and cologne didn't set them off, and kids never messed with them or exhaled into a bottle of water to trick them, wrangling up addicted kids and suspending them doesn't actually solve any problems. So according to the CDC, the most common reason youths give for continuing to use e-cigarettes or vaping is, quote, because they feel anxious, stressed, or depressed. Now that we know the installation cost of the detectors would be $500,000, I'd love to know what a similar investment in mental health services would look like. And heck, what if we used a fraction of that money for a network of late buses to overcome transportation hurdles so that more kids could engage in meaningful after-school activities? I was alarmed to hear this board's discussion veer toward punitive measures, especially when dealing with nicotine-dependent children. Imagine if instead of kicking kids out of school, we thought first about how to address the root causes of the problems our students face. I know many teachers, staff, and administrators tackle the root causes of student problems day in and day out, and I urge the entirety of this board to do the same. Thank you.
Next is Betty Blackerby? Blackerby, okay, sorry. Welcome.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this afternoon.
Uh-oh. There's a dog there.
I'm a member of this community. I'm a former teacher and an avid reader. As far back as I can remember, there were books in my home. When I was sick and missed about a month of school in first grade, the books were overwhelming. There were library books and school books and church school books and my own beginning collection. No books were off limits. And I hope that this county keeps it like that. All books available to all children. Books answer our questions, lead us to other questions. Books keep us safe. Books give us role models and provide us information that is often sorely missed from the family dining table in the evenings. 3 boys that I knew in high school, 1 a cousin, and 2 just 2 nice guys, might have lived long and fruitful lives had they known a little bit more about homosexuality and didn't commit suicide at an early age. I've drawn some information from an organization called PEN America. That's P-E-N. Did you know that during the first half of the school year in 22-23, the number of banned books rose by 28% over the previous 6 months? That's a lot of books. The implications of these kinds of bans are far-reaching. There are 5 states that were considered those most prevalent, but those will spread to other states very quickly. Books bans are often targeting those people of color, people who are LGBTQ individuals, dozens of books that have been targeted because they have sexual content. I want to encourage this board and this county to understand that we must encourage reading widely and deeply at every possible opportunity so that the freedom that I had as a child will continue for the next generations. Reading is the bedrock of freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, we have Alex Ramirez. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Alex Ramirez, and I am an MTSS TA at Upward Elementary, and previously a 3rd grade teacher for 2 years at the same school. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I want to tell you about what it's like to be a teacher and a specific experience that I'm calling resource overload. In my first year, my school purchased the iReady reading curriculum. We also were told to use the Henderson County Public Schools Standards Pacing Guide. So it was a bit difficult trying to learn the new curriculum, adjust it to the pacing guide, and adjust it to my students' needs. That year was hard, but I was more confident the upcoming year. Then in my 2nd year, I already had a new version of the curriculum with new reading passages and new lesson plans. I once again had to learn a new curriculum, adjust it to my pacing guide, and adjust it to my students' needs. Then when I got back from winter break of that 2nd year, I was told I was going to pilot a new reading curriculum. This picture I have here is the 2 pallets of resources placed in front of my classroom that I had 1 month to prepare and teach in February. To sum it up, I taught 3 different curriculums in 2 years of teaching. Fast forward to now, at the last board meeting, Newsela, News ELA, was approved as a sole source vendor. According to the document, the cost will be $169,000. During my 2 years of teaching, where I taught 3 different curriculums, I only opened up Newsela twice. Once during the single and only professional development for Newsela, and the second time when I tried to open the resource, got overwhelmed, and just went back to the curriculum I was already told to teach. I bring this up because this is resource overload. Resources that we did not ask for are being thrown at teachers, and we are not given the time to properly look through it. And also, thousands and thousands of dollars are being spent on resources that teachers are not even opening. I want to wrap up my comment and I want to offer a different way that $169,000 could have been used. That is hiring more support staff. Having more people, such as second grade teacher assistants that I heard one time existed in Henderson County Public Schools, to give interventions to students that need those interventions. Or hiring more AIG, EC, or ESL teachers so that these teachers do not have to be shared between two different schools and that students can receive the services that they need. We need more people in our schools, not another website subscription. Please stop spending money on resources that are not being used and instead hire more support staff to support our classroom teachers. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Chris Walters. Welcome, sir.
Hello. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to talk about the recent budget from the North Carolina General Assembly. The budget continues to fail teachers and those who work in public schools. Republican lawmakers who control the General Assembly voted to take hundreds of millions of dollars that should go to public schools and are giving it to parents of children attending private schools, with millions of dollars more to follow. The private schools are not held to the same standard as public schools and have virtually no public accountability. Public money should stay in public schools. According to the budget, beginning teachers will only be paid about $41,000 a year, not enough to encourage new teachers to enter the field. Pay tops out at $55,000 a year, even after 30 years. In order to repair the funding shortfall for local schools, county commissioners will have to raise property and sales taxes on the local population to make up for what the General Assembly has taken away. Funding teachers is the responsibility of the state legislature, and Republican lawmakers are abandoning this responsibility. We want our local schools to succeed. If we continue to vote for people in the General Assembly who are not funding schools adequately, we're hurting our schools and everyone who works there. Let me name our 23 schools: Atkinson Elementary, Bruce Drysdale, Clear Creek, Dana, Edneyville, Etowah, Fletcher, Glen Marlow, Hendersonville, Hillendale, Mills River, Sugarloaf, Upward Elementary, Flat Rock Middle School. I'm a retired English language arts teacher from Flat Rock Middle School. Apple Valley, Hendersonville Middle, and Rugby Middle. East High, North Henderson, West, Hendersonville High, Henderson County Early Child College, and Henderson County Career Academy. There are over 13,500 students in these schools and over 900 teachers. Republican lawmakers are failing these students and teachers. Henderson County Public Schools is the largest employer in the county. We can help the local economy by building up our local school system. Elect lawmakers who will fund our public schools. Tell them to stop rigging the tax system to favor the corporations and the already wealthy. They don't need the money. Fund our teachers, teacher assistants, administrators, secretaries, custodians, counselors, coaches, bus drivers, and cafeteria workers. Elect people who will fund our public schools. That will help everyone in our community. And I want to add a few facts from the resolution you sent to the legislators yourself. Research on private school vouchers in other states demonstrates that students who moved to private schools fell academically behind their peers who stayed in public schools. And North Carolina is facing a teacher shortage crisis of more than 5,000 teacher vacancies, leaving tens of thousands of students without a qualified teacher and putting those students' success at risk. That's the context in which our legislature is taking hundreds of millions of dollars from our public schools and giving to schools which have virtually no accountability. Thank you.
My name is Joyce Baer. Welcome.
I have a prophetic word from the Lord. I'd like to read it, please. America will survive. America will live on. America will be healed from all the damage caused by your enemies. America will be completely restored. America will regain the power it once had, the power that had always belonged to this nation. Everything that belongs to this nation will be given back. America will rise higher. America will stand strong and united. My United States will have justice once again. My America will conquer every enemy. America, your flag stands for freedom. and that flag will fly high and be respected and loved once again worldwide. America, the darkness that has tried to destroy your light, your blessing, and your assignment is being destroyed by my light and my glory. America the beautiful, you will be beautiful once again. America, you will be the most beautiful and the most powerful nation in this world, as I have assigned you to be. America will be the hope, the light, the beacon, the nation that blesses like no other nation. Not only am I bringing back my David into power, but I am also bringing back everyone with him that have had their seats stolen. Their positions will be restored. My children, in this land of my eagle, hold on through it all. Hold on through the times ahead. I am not done with this nation, and your enemies will never destroy you, nor take away the calling upon this nation. The coup against this nation will come down. The infiltrators will all come out, and none of them will be left standing. Because of my love for you, I will not fail you. I will not forsake you. No, never. My nation is rising above it all. Do not fear. Do not comply to their lies and their so-called power. My power will outlast, and it will always overthrow the enemies against my children. So stand strong, stand bold, stand united, stand on my word. My eagle is about to soar higher than ever before. So America, my United States, rise and take your place on this earth where you were always meant to be, saith the Lord of hosts. Thank you.
All right, next, consent agenda. I'll take a motion to approve the consent.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Consent is approved. Old business, we have the discussion on the vape detectors, Mr. Carl Taylor.
Good evening, Board. At last month's meeting, the discussion about vape detectors presented some questions from the board, and so I just have a presentation that hopefully can answer a good part of those questions, and then from there be able to answer any questions that then follow. So most of the questions that stem from last week's conversation was about the discipline. How is it handled within our schools? What is some of the data from it? And so in terms of how it is handled, that all stems from our Student Code of Conduct that can be found on our webpage under the Students tab. So on that yellow ribbon towards the top under Students is that Student Code of Conduct. And in terms of vapes, really vapes fall under two parts within our Student Code of Conduct. As Dr. Geiser shared, there are the basic vapes, which just contain nicotine. And so those would fall under the smoking or use of tobacco products within our Student Code of Conduct. And then there are those that have THC or other products, other controlled substances. And so that would fall under the drugs and alcohol section of the Student Code of Conduct. As we look at the tobacco part of our Student Code of Conduct, it does reference board policy. So that's where every part of our Student Code of Conduct is pulled from, is what does the policy say to start with. And so policy 4320 is the one that talks about how tobacco products are prohibited on our campuses. It then provides the guidance to our administrators in terms of the discipline that is then how it is handled from a discipline standpoint. With tobacco products, it states that principals really have the option between ISS and OSS depending upon the circumstances of the event. When it comes to vapes that contain nicotine in our schools, the standard suspension related to vapes is a 3 to 5 day out of school suspension. All right. As we transition to the vapes that contain THC or some other type of controlled substance, again, that falls under the drugs and alcohol section of our Student Code of Conduct, which comes from our board policy 4325. And when it comes to drugs and alcohol, it is very clear that the suspension will be out of school and for a range of 5 to 10 days. And again, all of our schools apply that guidance. When it comes to vapes, that contain THC or some other type of controlled substance.
How are you verifying that it has THC in it versus?
That's where they rely heavily on their school resource officer. They sometimes have test kits that they can use to test it. They analyze it. Students are very truthful as well. And so students oftentimes will be very honest with an administrator and say, yes, it contains THC, or it doesn't. And so through those means is how they then would come to a conclusion of that this is the part of the student code of conduct that would apply. With drugs and alcohol, when there could be a repeat offender several times over, or if the incident warrants, a recommendation can be made to the superintendent that the student be removed to an alternative educational setting or given a long-term suspension. But again, that's when we have those very serious offenses where maybe a student is distributing some type of illegal drug, possession of a large quantity, or a repeat offender is when it would rise to that level. As we look at our data from 22-23 school year, our middle schools reported 104 vape-related offenses, and then our high schools reported 156 vape-related offenses. In pulling the data to start out this school year, our middle schools reported 5 offenses, and this would have been as the start of last week was whenever I pulled this data, and then our high schools reported 15. You know, as we think about pulling data, it's only as good as where the source comes from. And all of this data does come from PowerSchool. Prior to this school year, PowerSchool really didn't have good identifiers when it came to vape offenses. There was one, and it was titled non-tobacco. And so when you start talking about the variations of vape offenses, that bucket didn't always apply. Fortunately, as of last week, DPI updated PowerSchool with these new codes that can be used to track the discipline offenses. And so as you can see, it is now broken up into categories. So we have our THC, controlled substance categories, tobacco, and then CBD. So as we look at going through this school year and at the end of the school year, we're going to have some really good data to pull from in terms of these categories and knowing what is the challenge that our schools are facing. Also, one part of the process when a school confiscates vapes is our safe disposal program. I really applaud our Director of School Safety, Scott Massington, as last spring. He worked closely with our Sheriff's Department and our school nurses to put this program together. A lot of it was on the heels of the Tennessee incident that Dr. Geiser mentioned, where thinking about how do we protect our employees when they confiscate a vape. It's not safe to just use your bare hands to touch one of these because you don't know what substance is in it and what substance is on it. So our school nurses have this disposal box in their offices. That is a secure location to where very few people have access to it. The nurses put together these baggies with gloves so that administrators can come or a school resource officer can come to their office, grab one of these baggies that's pre-made, put the gloves on as they confiscate it, put it in there, and then it goes inside this box. Our school resource officers work together to have those disposed through the Sheriff's Department. And so as we look at, since this program started in last spring, the Sheriff's Department has disposed of 25 pounds of vapes for us, and they estimate that at being approximately 250 devices. All right. So at this time, I'll take any questions from this or any other questions that still linger from last month's presentation.
Questions from anyone from the board?
So Carl, at one point, and I can't tell you when, there used to be some type of, along with a suspension, either out of school or in school, there was some kind of required education that we had the students go through. It was before technology, so it was packets of information. Are there any programs out there that we could, along with, and we would reduce the suspended time if students completed this information, this curriculum, if you will. Are there any programs out there that we could look at? I couldn't hear exactly the name of the program that you had mentioned that showed that it was much more effective than the vape detectors. But is that something we can look at as an alternative to maybe, instead of 5 days OSS, we go 3 days if you complete this program?
Yes, Dr. Evans. One thing that we currently have available in our schools is an online module. It has, I think it's 3 components within the module. It takes about 90 minutes for a student to work through it at a self-paced rate, but it doesn't have that adult interaction that a lot of programs, I think, that have had success include that adult interaction. We've explored some of those, but the challenge there is the staffing. Who do we have available that can provide that appropriate face-to-face interaction when these incidents arise? I think that's where we've got to continue to explore our partnership with Hope Coalition. They've been a great partner for us in so many ways, and so as we think about this, I think that's an area we can continue to explore.
Don't we have staff members that are in charge of ISS?
Yes.
So why wouldn't we have the ISS teacher handle that?
I think in some days it potentially could be appropriate depending upon the number of students in that space. But when we think about these interactions, the confidentiality and also providing that private space for a student to have an honest conversation, sometimes that space wouldn't be appropriate. But it's something we can explore, like is there the possibility there?
And in some of these offenses, they're out of school suspended.
Yeah, and that's kind of the problem that I have with it, because you're right, they are power vaping when you go home. You don't suspend somebody and they're going to change some behavior that day because of it. Like, that's not going to happen, right? Alcohol, a little different. I think it's a lot tougher to get than walking into any store at all and anywhere near here to pick one up, and they've got, like you said, displays everywhere. But suspending a kid for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days because they're addicted to nicotine, and then not having any type of with ISS teachers, it's a confidentiality issue. Well, hell, we just suspended the kid for 3 days. Everybody knows why he got suspended. She, her, him, everybody knows. I think we can do a better job of that instead of just sending kids home. So we got to find a better way. I mean, you're never going to stop it. There's going to be always the next thing. There's going to be the next thing. I think clearly our legislators have to look at this and see, when you go in there, you'll see cherry and lemon and orange and flavors everywhere. If you're going to buy a Snickers and a Mountain Dew at the gas station, you walk to the counter and there's hundreds of them, right? And so if you eliminate the flavors, I think you do bring that down a little bit and get rid of cotton candy. And if you make it, what was it? Marlboro Reds, whatever. I think you eliminate a lot of the kids' maybe fascination or willingness to even try it. You know what I'm saying? Now, that's beyond us. But I think we can do a better job. You put up on a slide, go back to your slide with how many kids last year we had?
260 or something.
I forget how many it was. 300? 260. So for each of those offenses, we suspended a kid we at least gave him ISS.
At a minimum, yes, sir.
At a minimum, but a lot of them got OSS because of it. We can do better. We've got to figure out a way, so.
Especially if these are repeat offenses.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to see
that's-
what the data was, how many of this was repeat offenders and so on and so forth. But I know Power School, listen, the principals know who's vaping and who's not and who these kids are. And so I think if you guys could bring us a little bit better data on not just the Power School data, on are these repeat offenders, what's going on, what can we do better, especially to hit those high flyers. I know the kids that maybe are a little bit more, they're higher achieving and they got caught that one time and then the parents finally found out because they got suspended. Maybe that changes things, but there are definitely kids that are doing it over and over and over.
And I know in our health education curriculum from 6th grade on, even in elementary school, we talk about tobacco prevention and all this. But let's face it, during COVID times and even when we were coming back sporadically every other day, our kids didn't get the health curriculum. They did not get this preventative kind of perspective. And those students, many of those are in upper middle school and even in high school at this point. But I just think education has to be a part of the solution. And I don't know what that looks like or who delivers it.
I wouldn't mind having, if you guys could connect at some particular point in time, especially the Aspire program, as I believe what it was called, right? And see what kind of other programs we have out there. I just hate suspending kids for 5 days, and then if you get caught, have we sent anybody from vaping to an alternative school setting? Right.
Not in my time.
Right.
How involved are your school counselors with a student who's caught vaping?
I couldn't speak to just off the top of my head, how many times they connect with that. I know, again, when a student is suspended, there's always a conversation with the parent or guardian. And then from that then would stem what other follow-up conversations could occur, whether that's with a counselor, a social worker, or connecting with outside resources.
Well, I think anytime we suspend a student, it's very serious.
Oh, yes.
We deny that education for our students. And it starts a cycle, a downward spiral for many students from which they never recover. And I think, vaping is the issue we're talking about now, but there are many other issues as well. I just really wish we could get creative here and put together something or look at some programs that have been effective.
Well, I'm not a big fan of some organizations, but I do think that if we see that the children are addicted, why not have some kind of program set up in the school for that type of behavior? Is that possible? You know what I'm saying? Like a
I think a lot of times it comes down to just that manpower and accessibility.
I get that. I get that.
If the resources were there, human capital resources, I think we would already be taking advantage of some of those. One of the things that we find when we partner with organizations or when we're looking at counselors or social workers or whatever, we have some turnover sometimes and they don't stay. So it's really, can you connect in with that right partner resource to be proactive rather than reactive? It's also changing the mindset of the community a little bit between punishment and accountability. There's a lot of different ways to be accountable that's not just punitive. And I'm a big believer in putting the responsibility back on the student, where you give them a chance to sort of self-correct with some guidance, but then if they can keep that repetitive behavior is when you would get toward some of the more punitive things. So I think there's some things we can do on the front end to work so that we're consistent across the district. That was the first thing that we wanted to show and see is we're trying to be consistent so that people know what to expect, and then start working from that point backwards into, all right, so what does a first offense look like? And I'm a big believer in there's a difference in a user and a somebody in the commerce business who is profiting from said sales of all kinds of materials that might be there. So I think we can delineate that. The other piece is with what they have set up. So, for years you got tobacco money. And for years, you got tobacco cessation programs, and you were funded. Each LEA had a chance to fund a tobacco education person. Well, that's no longer around, and nobody's coming along with the vaping or the other substance resources that would then allow us. And I know we talk about budget and we talk about price, but I think it's important to also note that we have very strict accountability measures towards certain funds that we can't necessarily bring in more of X because this money is targeted for Y. So a lot of times they will let you do a online program, but they won't pay for you to bring a counselor in necessarily. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this, but absolutely, to Mr. Craven's point, I think we can very much control where the levels of the punitive or the accountability are there. Look at the online options initially, but 90 minutes is not enough. No. A 90-minute compliance click-through-the-box program is enough for us to say, gosh, we put you through a program, congratulations. It's not necessarily going to be that effective, so we'll need to look at some some of the more in-depth and detailed that have some follow-up and follow-through, because that's what I've seen be most effective, is when you can have a counselor or somebody that's their specialty, substances abuse is their specialty, who can give initial guidance, connect the dots to community resources that are there, that's their specialty, and then also provide some follow-up. In as much as families may or may not be comfortable making an appointment, well, we could help connect that. So almost like a navigator to get to some of those resources is an idea that we could also explore.
How many of our school social workers actually have our credential to be substance abuse counselors?
I would say very, very few, if any.
None?
I don't know the stats here. I know in McDowell County, there is one youth substance abuse certified person out of 50,000 people. There's one, because the school district hired that person so that we could do some things.
So one of the things that you had said was that the academic loss was there. Do we have the data for that? I mean, I know this is kind of like on the fly, but would we possibly know anything about the numbers there?
The only thing we could convert would be the number of school hours lost or days lost, which is time lost.
OSS? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, time out of class.
Okay.
We could figure that up. We could go through all 260 kids and look at GPAs and all that. That would be pretty, that'd be pretty expansive, because I don't know of those who are repeaters or who aren't. Now, again, my point was, this coming year, moving from this year beyond, we can run that data better because it will be vape rather than a non-tobacco or a general violation, which some people will put it under, or, whatever our assistant principals and principals are using. And they're not wrong. They're using something that's appropriate. There are just too many options out there. Where now, when we go to look up Power School information on vaping, it will show us those numbers. Vaping tobacco, nicotine, or vaping THC.
All right, any other questions on this data? Okay. Next up, capital update. Well, we have no new business. So we got some board superintendent reports, capital update.
All right, so I'll give a quick rundown, starting with projects that are funded by the school system, so by this board. Since the start of the school year, we've taken on a number of projects, the first one being a roof replacement at our maintenance building that was part of this year's capital budget, and so that replacement has been completed at this time, as well as some plumbing repairs at West Henderson in their wrestling locker room. At the end of last school year, our maintenance department discovered some sewer line issues with that locker room, so it was shut down over the summer, and so that work has been completed. So as wrestling season approaches, that locker room will be ready to rock and roll. In terms of Bruce Drysdale, also part of this year's capital budget is an HVAC unit replacement for the office, and so that work is in progress. For Fletcher Elementary, again, as part of this year's capital project, the board approved the replacement of the intercom and installation of classroom phones. That work had to move on a little bit quicker than originally planned. We got a call, I believe it was on a Thursday, that the intercom system had served its final day for that school. Fortunately, our relationship with Haynes allowed them to quickly come in on an emergency situation like this and have us a new intercom up and running the first of the next week. So that was a very quick turnaround there to address that safety concern. Again, fortunately, it was part of our budget as well, so it didn't create a financial strain on our end in any way. And then also with that will come the new classroom VoIP phones as well. The perimeter fence at East Henderson, the fencing that you see out front is complete now, along with all of the gates. There are still 2 gates, one for the stadium and one for the bus lot, that still need to be installed. And once they get those 2 things finished, then that project will have a complete beside it as well. And then the final one, the big one, is our playground upgrades at our elementary schools. And so in terms of the delivery of equipment, all of that is complete. There may be 1 or 2 small pieces that are still lingering to be delivered, but the bulk of the equipment has been delivered at all of our elementary schools. Installation has begun at 6 out of our 13 schools. The first one to get started and finished was Upward Elementary, so that's why you get these beautiful pictures here of these students getting to play out there. And you're right, they went an entire school year, all of last school year, without a playground due to safety concerns for the one that was there before this one. Went out there the day it opened, and you just talk about some happy kids. They were coming up to Mr. Gates saying, "Thank you, Mr. Gates," and I told him to go ahead and take credit for that. I said, you know, you're going to get blamed for some things you didn't do, so take credit for something you didn't do as well at times.
Looks like some mulch that some guys threw down there too, huh?
Oh, yes, it's.
Wasn't that you guys?
No, that's the rubber mulch that came with this
Rubber
project.
mulch. Okay.
And
You
so
guys mulch
it's,
somewhere else.
yeah.
Different playground. Okay.
So it's
Okay.
6 inch, I believe it's 6 inches deep of rubber mulch. Yeah, so awesome playground there, and just again, awesome for those kids in that school community to have that available to them now. Also, these two opened up today as students returned to our flex schools. So Bruce Drysdale, even though you see caution tape there, that picture was from last week, but it did open up today. The caution tape was there till our playground inspector could get out there to take a look at it and make sure that everything was safe and ready for those kids today. And then Hendersonville Elementary opened up as well. 3 other big ones that are still under construction. Hillendale Elementary will be finished any day now. So what you see there, the equipment is installed in that picture. Next phase then was the gravel, the border, and then getting the rubber mulch down. But that should happen either late tonight or first thing tomorrow. So maybe by the end of the week, that playground will be ready to go for Hillendale. Clear Creek, you see there off in the distance, started last week as well, construction-wise. And then the final one currently under construction is Mills River Elementary as well. And so once they finish those up, they'll be able to transition to the remaining schools and keep working right along on those. Yeah, it's very exciting. Highlight of my day is getting to go out there and see those, just especially knowing how much the kids enjoy them. In terms of the MRTS projects through the county, the ones for this school year, the first one is HVAC replacement at Atkinson Elementary. That is currently under the engineering phase, where an engineer has been out there to visit and start working on what that design will look like for the school in phase 1 of a 3-year process of replacing the HVAC system at that school. Roof replacement for this year is currently for sections of Flat Rock Middle School, North Henderson, and West Henderson. And so that has already gone out for bid through the county. And so the bid opening is this week, as well as for gutter and downspout replacement at East Henderson and Hendersonville Middle School. That bid opening is that same day. For security cameras at the elementary schools, that is now complete. So all of our elementary schools now have officially joined our middle and high schools with the security cameras installed and up and running. As part of that project, it also will include the technology, so Mills River Academy, and also a couple of cameras here at the central office. And so now Haynes is finishing up by installing cameras at those locations. The 2 big projects that are underway as well for Upward Elementary, the secure entry and cafeteria expansion. For the secure entry, our county commissioners approved a guaranteed max price for that part of the project, so it has been approved, and that Vinoy could set up by the end of the month. And so that part of the project, by the time we meet again in November, I may have some pictures to show you of what Vinoy has already started there. So that's exciting to know that something that has taken a while to get here might actually get started. In terms of the cafeteria part, that is still, the construction documents phase is still being completed by the architect. Then for West Henderson, the new front office and then the building connection there as well, it's really the same there. The architect continues to finalize those construction documents so that the budget can be finalized and the bidding process begin. So I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, sir.
You're very welcome.
Mr. Taylor, I don't have a question, but my 5th grader did express some concern that he was not consulted with the equipment going in at Mills River, so I don't know if you can make a note of that.
I apologize. We were under a tight crunch. I don't know if you know about our finance department, but they say things got to get done by this date, and so that's what we tried.
Well, I just told Luke he needed to know some more important people than me. That's what I told him.
All right, next up, low-performing schools update. Yeah.
Good evening, board. Once again, just want to share, this is kind of the timeline that we're looking at. This is our yearly timeline. None of this has changed, but I did want to bring to your attention what we're looking at as it comes to our schools that have been designated as low performing. These are the requirements that are set forth by the General Assembly and NCDPI. All the plans are located in NC STAR, which all of our schools do use for their school improvement planning process. But it says here that any school that's designated low performing are those that receive a D or F and a school growth score of met expected growth or not met. So if you have met expected growth is where they predict where you're supposed to be, and if you hit that mark, it still does not matter. They will consider you as a low performing school. So only if you exceed expected growth and have a D or F. So one of the requirements is that we do develop a school or district plan. So the timeline starts October 5th. That is when the official designation starts your timeline. So this is the report for this month. In November, we will bring forward a couple of different things, and then December is when you will vote on the final plan. So these are requirements. Again, low performing, the following shall be taken. So step one is where the superintendent evaluates the leadership at each school that has this designation and does one of the following, and this will be at the November meeting, to you as a board collective, and that is recommend that the principal be retained in the current position. Obviously, there are conditions. Recommend that the principal be retained and a plan of remediation be developed. Recommend that the principal be transferred or proceed under General Statute 115C-325.4 to dismiss or demote the principal. That will be very, very rare anywhere across the state of North Carolina that option 4 would be there, because there's a lot of other criteria that go into a demotion or dismissal. Step 2 is what you will see in earnest in November. That's within the 30 days of the designation. So 30 days from today when we do this report, we will submit to you a preliminary plan for improving both the school performance grade and the growth, because it's the two measures. Again, the performance is 80% of the measure, the growth is 20% of the measure, including how the central office and I, as your superintendent, will monitor and work with schools on that progress. So once that is accepted by you as the preliminary plan, it will be available for review by the public for a 30-day period, and then that is when you will come back and see it at your December meeting. Also in this time period, we will begin notifying the parents in our schools that have been designated as low performing with the following statements, and that is something that we have prepared to send out at this time, and that will come out of the principal's office at the individual school level. Step 3, again, is where you will approve, modify, or reject the preliminary plan in November. If you do modify and approve, or modify or approve in any way, then we will again lay that out for the public to review and the schools to review as well before coming back for a final approval in December. Once you make your final approval at the December meeting, then we have 5 days to submit that to the state. That is submitted the same way as the improvement plans are always submitted. That's through the NC STAR system, and that is how they are monitored. I can tell you in my tenure as a superintendent, I've received very little feedback from DPI and zero monitoring on those plans. So they really leave it up to the district to take care of those things internally. And I think they spend their time with the districts that have some of the schools that are in a little bit different designation, the F schools and some of those things. So submitting the plan, again, anybody, NC STAR is a public document. You can jump on and see those school improvement plans once they are in there. And we have resource documents that our schools can use as they are developing these plans. Not only that, but our school system also has central office folks who are designated school improvement plan partners that go out and meet with those school improvement teams at the school level, not just at our schools designated as low performing, but at all 23 schools. So these are the schools and what their status currently ended up being as a result of the 22-23 testing data. It's Apple Valley Middle School, D, they did meet growth. Dana Elementary is a D, did not meet. Edneyville Elementary is a D, did not meet. Flat Rock Middle is a D, they did meet growth. Hillendale Elementary is a D and did not meet. And then Upward Elementary is a D and met growth. So half of those schools met their learning targets for the year on the growth side, not on the performance indicator side. So again, 80% is the accountability proficiency and 20% is the accountability growth. So again, this is just your information for October. We'll have the detailed preliminary plan in November, along with the other pieces that we will have for steps 2 and 3. And then you will have step 4 on your December meeting for us to then submit. So I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have about this process.
Questions for the superintendent in low-performing schools? All right, look forward to that report next month. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next up, financial statements, Mr. Bernie Sosha.
All right, good evening. Just a couple reports for you this month. We have the local current expense and other restricted funds through September 30. We have received revenue to date of $10,169,691, and we have spent $7,395,016. This is the good time of year because we're building up for the local supplement, which gets to come out half of it next month, which we will use up a lot of that money. The other report is for the capital outlay fund through September 30th. We're on track with our revenues at $450,000 and expenditures at $626,791, which includes the $350,000 for that property exchange, which concluded, which didn't come out of our current year budget. That's why there's that little difference there. You did hear that there's a budget. We're very happy. We have a budget. It was official last Tuesday, I believe it was, and they proceeded to put out the new salary schedules for all of our staff and then pulled them back about a day later because they were wrong.
Good.
But not because of the budget, just because they had put some stuff out. But by the end of last week, they did have them corrected. So they are back out. So we are proceeding with those so that we can get the salary changes in place for October payroll. And the goal is to also retro pay everyone back to July this month as well. So we're doing our best to crunch those numbers so we can get everybody caught up in October. Like I said, it's an average of 4% for our teachers. For the teachers, I said that's an average, so it ranges anywhere from 2 to 7.5% for teachers, which includes, the average includes a step increase. The good news for our local schedules, we are giving a 4% increase. That's independent of the step increase, so they'll get the 4% in addition to a step increase. So we're able to do that. So that is what the non-classified or the classified employees are getting, is a 4% increase. So they will all see that this month.
Good.
All right. Any questions?
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
And Mr. Garrett with General Operations.
Thank you, Mr. Craven, members of the board. It's my pleasure to share our information for October. First of all, this week is National School Lunch Week, so I want to say thank you to all our student and school nutrition professionals out there who are doing a great job, not only each and every year, but especially this year as we have moved to CEP and we continue to see our participation increase as the year goes. And my apologies, I wanted to have a little report for you today, and it just slipped my mind because I was going to show you how we continue to serve more kids each and every day for our breakfast and lunch. But just rest assured, you have made a good investment on that for this year. World Mental Health Day is tomorrow. And the annual Education Foundation Golf Classic is next Monday at Champion Hills. And really have to say thank you to the Ed Foundation for not only what they do for us, but also what they do in the community and how well they connect with those resources that are out there. Optional Teacher Work Day also is next Monday. That's no school for students on the traditional and early college calendar. The Flex Calendar schools already had their larger break, and they did their PD Day last Friday. Required Teacher Work Day is on Tuesday. This is our District Professional Development Day. This is also where we're getting closer to the completion of the letters training at the elementary level, which I know everyone is looking forward to. NC Countdown to College and the College Application Week is October 16th through 20th. I think it's important for everybody to understand when we talk about college, we're talking about really all options post-secondary. So there is an opportunity to learn more about that and also to do the College Application Week. Superintendent Teacher Advisory Council meets on the 19th, and then the Parent Advisory Council meets at 5:30. So we're doing the meetings on the same afternoons this year, back to back, because we end up talking about a lot of the same options and opportunities as well. November is Veterans History Appreciation Month in North Carolina, obviously Veterans Day, and can't say enough about the dedication and sacrifice of our men and women who have served the armed forces, which also reminds me, we also have an Honor Air community event coming up again this weekend, which as a school district, you're assisting in that by providing some buses, because I know there's a ton of construction at the Asheville Airport, so we're offering some shuttle opportunities with that. So again, thank you for your willingness to help participate in that.
But not only that, a lot of our schools, elementary schools, have decided to use one of their classes to pick a veteran and have, I probably shouldn't say that, a lot of them don't know it. They wrote letters to our veterans.
There's some good stuff.
Good stuff going on.
More to come after Saturday, right, sir?
Much more, yes.
But then National School Psychology Week is November 6th through 10th. November 8th will be your next round of board tours, which is West Henderson High School, Bruce Drysdale Elementary School, and Apple Valley Middle School. Veterans Day will be celebrated on November 11th. I always like to share this odd school calendar trivia. That is the only day in North Carolina that you cannot have school. Sundays and Veterans Day. So you have to take Veterans Day on that holiday. And then November 13th will be our next business meeting, beginning at 4 o'clock. And then Substitute Educators Day is November the 14th. And boy, if you're in a school and you're a principal, that is a wonderful day to celebrate substitute teachers and all of the folks who come in and help us when we need it. If I can take just a little point of privilege here, I want to thank all of you who do stay for the entire meeting. It's exciting to know that you're invested not only to come in and talk, but also to learn about the entire business process, and that makes me feel good about the community that we're in and we serve. So thank you for your support of the Board of Education and telling us the good and bad and the ugly as we move forward and try to improve for our students. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. All right. All those in favor say aye. All right, good. We're adjourned. Thank you.